Good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful to be starting on time here at 10 o'clock on this beautiful Sunday. And we have good reason to celebrate. We all do. I don't know if you know, I don't know if you remember, but it was mentioned a few weeks ago that we are going to have a baptism today. I know. And I'm kind of excited because 26 years ago and 2 days ago, I was baptized. My spiritual birthday is 2/20/2000. And so I'm excited to share an almost spiritual birthday with anyone, honestly. It's the best decision I ever made. This week in our Great Escape series, we're talking about orders. And that's a weird way to say this. We're not talking about Seth out back acting as the gruff barista of AGC over in Java Gyro. We're not talking about orders like military, but we're talking about orders nonetheless. To review from our previous lessons, it was by God's grace that we were saved through faith. The pistis we talked about, that persuasion. And it was through knowledge, that epignosis of Jesus, that close relationship, that personal close relationship that we have, this knowledge of who he is. That's how we escape corruption, internal rot. That's what that is in our lives, and it gets to be a problem for us, and we escape that to become a building fitly framed. Last week we learned that we are to diligently or urgent attention or care. Trevor was absolutely right. When Trevor talked about maximum impact, diligence is the word that I would use to describe everything he talked about. Do not put this off. Do not consider this less important. We are to add, to furnish our faith. We're to build it up, make it something greater. Our actions, our follow-through really does matter. And we start with virtue. That's where we had to start last week. We talked about virtue last week, the arit, the excellence of God. If we don't have a plan, a model, and I put up the word I here for a reason. If we don't look at the model, if we don't look at the blueprints, if we don't look at the thing we are building on top of, the foundation, it is really hard to get started. So we need to have this excellent example in our lives. The rest of the building will be perfect if we do, and if we don't have that model, if we don't look at the right things, we'll be in danger of stumbling or worse. We're going to jump right in. You have a question at the top of your page about the greatest boss you ever had. Now, I've stopped to think about this a little bit, and I've had a number of bosses over the years. I worked at Shopko, I worked at Super One, I worked at a Catholic church as a custodian. I've worked as a teacher for many years now. And I had to stop and think. And you could cop out, well, Jesus is the... No. I'm talking about your earthly jobs. Who's the best boss you ever had? And if I stopped and thought about it, I'd have to say it was Julie. Back when I worked at Shopko, there's a lady named Julie who worked there. She was a diligent person. And she always wanted an excellence in everything we did at the store. So that meant at the end of the day, every towel got refolded. Why? At the end of the day, every shelf was stocked and faced neatly. Well, why? Can't I just reach in and grab any? Yeah, you can. But there's an excellence that the store wanted. And the funny thing is, when Julie left the store dipped. When Julie was in the store rose based on its excellence. Now, I have to admit, my wife and I both worked at that Shopko. And when we left, the place went to shambles. Because there's something more to excellence than just the boss in charge. But she really did want excellence. And I think that excellence she wanted and God's blessing that he brought with the people who worked there made a huge difference. I don't have time to get into all that, but I think there's something to it. There's definitely something to this. And so she expected us to get some things done, to know some things, to put some things into the job. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk today about knowledge. We already talked about knowledge, Dan. Well, a little bit different. I'll explain why. In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra was famous for these weird sayings he would have that seemed seemingly contradictory, and yet they were full of wisdom. And here he says, in theory, in my conceptualization, there's no difference between conceptualization and practice. But Jeremy, you're a welder. You can learn about welding, but until you do the welding, you don't know anything. That's just what it is. Craig, I'm sure it's the same for carpentry. You can learn about wood, but until you work with the wood, you don't know much. Like, these are real things. Sherry, you can learn about teaching kids in Sunday school, but until you teach kids in Sunday school or children's church, you don't have a clue. In practice, you have to learn some things differently. Another quote about knowledge from Socrates is that true knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing. Not that you literally know nothing, but there's a lot to know out there. And true knowledge is that, hey, I've got some things to learn. That's what he had to say about it. And I think we're going to find some things similar to that in our practice of application of the Bible here. In 2 Peter, our key verse, chapter 1, verses 5 through 6. But also for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue. Excellence, God's excellence. Add God's excellence to your life. And when it becomes your excellence, your virtue, you're supposed to add knowledge. That's where we're at today. We're going to try and add knowledge to this virtue. So we saw God's excellence, and it became our excellence last week. This week, we're going to try and add to that knowledge. We're going to try and figure out what that means. And then next week, we get to self-control, when we're going to add that to our knowledge. Knowledge here is the word gnosis. You might think, well, that's weird. We already talked about knowledge. It was epignosis. Epignosis and gnosis. What's the difference? Well, there is one. And Peter used them, and Paul uses the same words as well. And he uses the two different words for a reason. We use the same word knowledge every time. So for us, it's like love. I can love my grandma. I can love my dog. I could love, but do we mean the same thing when I love chocolate? Well, Greg, do I really love chocolate? It gets iffy right there, doesn't it? It's not one of those things. Like you can say, oh, I love chocolate. It's like, well, do you love chocolate the way you love your grandma? I hope not. Trevor, do you love anything like you love your kids? Your wife, people in your family. Yeah, you love family, but you don't love your car the way you love your kids, or even your fancy new house. It's not the same. You don't love your job. You don't love your community. You don't love anything like you love some things. And so this is important to know. Knowledge is the same way. We use different words, but we have to understand what knowledge really is. And so here it says gnosis. It's knowledge, or like science. You went to school for gnosis. If you've been to college, if you pertained to yourself, applied yourself to high school, you were getting gnosis. You were getting knowledge. And some of it's through experience, some of it's through practical learning, some of it's through textbooks, a lot of different things. And it's the functional learning in life. And Peter says we have to add that to our virtue. We have to add functional learning, like a student, if that makes sense. But here's the real kicker. Functional learning is only as reliable, it can never be more reliable or less reliable than the relationship it derives from. If the book is flawed, the learning is flawed. If the teacher is misguided, then the student is misguided. If you went to find out on your own and you have a misconception, then you learned it incorrectly probably. That's just how it works. I mean, I mentioned before in the first lesson, the School of Hard Knocks is upon all of us. This is what we're talking about. You have to figure some things out. But the great news is, you might not have to do it alone. Now, according to ISBN, the book numbering system, along with Google's help, it is estimated that there are approximately 158 million different books in the world. 158 million different titles, books. Now multiply that times how many of each of those books there are. That is a lot of knowledge. If you've ever been to a library and not been at least a little bit in awe, especially when you're a kid, look at all the books, right? If you've never been to a bookstore and seen the new shelf of books, and it's hundreds of them every year. It's estimated there's like 2.5 million books minimum per year that are made, new books. That's a lot of knowledge. How much of it's worth knowing, though? So this is the question. There's a lot of knowledge out there, but how much of it's worth knowing? So let's take a look at some ways we can frame this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 8, Paul says, "And if anyone thinks he knows anything," on your sheet, if you think you know anything, he knows nothing yet, as he ought to know. If you think you've got it all figured out, surefire, you don't. If you know there's things for you to learn, you're going to be okay. But if you think you've got it all figured out, I wish I had known this when I was 16. No one told me this when I was 16. There's a reason they call them sophomores. Sophomoric means to know when you know nothing. And I was good at it. Oh, I was good at it when I was 16. And if you ask my wife, maybe she'll say I'm still pretty good at it sometimes. We try and think we know everything. We've got it all figured out. And one of the most frustrating answers you can give a child is, I don't know. Because they think for a while you kind of do know a lot of things. And at some point as an adult, you're like, your kids realize, oh, my parents don't know anything. Now, truth be told, you know a lot of things, but they think for a while because you can't answer their immediate question that you know nothing. But you know that you know what you know. That's how it works. That's all it is. That's all life is figuring out what you need to figure out. And because of your knowledge, in verse 11, shall the weaker brother perish for whom Christ died. Now it says your knowledge. This is important to understand. Here Paul was talking about the meat offered to idols. And Brother Bernard did a really good job. If you got a chance to listen to his kind of State of the Union UPC address for this year, he talked a little bit about this idea of where the church is, where the church is going, and he spent a good chunk of that talking about the liberty in Christ. Paul talks about this. We have liberty in Christ. There's a lot of things that we can do that are not sinful or wrong. But you have to be really careful with them because it says here in verse 11, your knowledge shall cause your weak brother to perish, for whom Christ died. You have to be really careful with what you know. Knowing some things can be dangerous to us. Not because we will be in danger, but how we present that knowledge can endanger others, being a stumbling block, if you will. It's why you should never let your good be evil spoken of. You should avoid the appearance of evil. Like those kinds of things are there for a reason because we have to do those things. We have to know some things, but we have to be careful with that knowledge because sometimes knowledge exalteth itself. Sometimes we let knowledge build up and then we think we know some stuff. Now, I have you all fooled. A number of people told me I'm a good teacher and I know some stuff. But I promise you, I absolutely 100% promise you, without God, I would come across a fool. 100%. When I get up here, I couldn't do it without God's help. So don't think that just because, well, he seems so smart, so put together. I know really very little. I am building on the backs of giants. I am building on a sure and beautiful foundation. So if it looks good, it's a lot of work that went in long before I got here and long before you got here. So just be aware, that's how it works. In 1 Timothy, Paul writes to Timothy and tells him, Command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, not to get caught up. They think they got a lot of stuff. Don't get caught up in that. Nor to trust in uncertain riches. Which knowledge could be considered? Some people think the greatest wealth on the planet is knowledge. What you know means if you know things, you can get things done. But in the living God, trust in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Let them do good. We talked about doing good works last time. Let them do good and be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation. Here we see that foundation, the idea again. And he continues on to say, for the time to come, that they may lay hold of eternal life. Sounds a lot like Peter now. O Timothy, guard what was committed to your trust. Larry, I want you to take a guess. What was committed to Timothy's trust? What did Paul put into Timothy that he wants guarded? It's truth. It's knowledge. Avoiding profane and idle babblings. Contradictions. What is falsely called knowledge. Lots of people think they know what's up. They know some stuff. And Paul warns Timothy, a lot of that stuff is fluff. You have to stick to what you were entrusted with because that's the real deal. That's the real stuff. That's the epignosis. The epignosis is the full knowing. Gnosis is just I'm learning, but epignosis is the full knowing. And he says, be careful. Don't give up things you know are real and good and true for stuff that sounds nice. Because by professing it, those vain babblings, those idle things, those contradictions, some people have strayed concerning the faith. They wandered off the wrong direction. Now, sadly, I know a few people like this, and so do you. They took what they knew of God, and they set it aside, and they learned this other stuff. And they dug into this other stuff. And the more they dug, the more they dug, the more they dug, the further they got from God. It's very sad. There are people who used to sit on these pews that today don't even acknowledge God. He doesn't matter to them. Did they learn something? I certainly think they did, like Adam and Eve did. Was it what they were supposed to learn, the way they were supposed to learn it? God forbid. In Luke 11, Jesus tells us, when he's talking to the Pharisees, no one, when he has lit a lamp, puts it in a secret place or under a basket. That wouldn't make sense. Sherry, you'd never turn the lamp on at your house and throw a blanket over it. It wouldn't do you any good. Laura, you wouldn't turn the light on and then shoot it out with a BB gun. That doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't take out the lamp you turned on for light. That just doesn't make any sense. He puts it on a lampstand. That those who come in the future, the people who come to see this light, they'll see it. It's meant to be shown. The lamp of the body. I want you to point to it. Your lamp is your eye. Go ahead, point at your lamp. Your lamp is your eye. Therefore, when your eye is good, when your eye is working properly, when it's doing the right things, your whole body is also full of light. The lamp of your body is your eye. The light of your... Now, some people say that you can see the soul of somebody in their eyes. I don't know if I believe that. I don't literally think that's how it works. But God is using this parallel to help us understand something. He says, if your eye is good, your whole body full of light. When your eye is bad... So, Carrie, when you're looking at the wrong stuff, when you're focused on the wrong things... I'm not picking on Carrie. I'm not saying I know anything about her. I don't know what she's been doing. But I know Carrie is honest. And if you were to ask her, Carrie, have you done some dumb... If you put your eyes on the wrong... Yeah. I've done it too. We all do it. You focus, you look at the wrong things, and your life is filled with darkness. That internal rot, that corruption. When your life is looking at the right things, you're full of light. Well, that begs the question, who lit the lamp? Who lit the light in you? I can tell you on February 20th of 2000, I know who lit the lamp right there, as I stood right there in a giant aqua blue baptismal, a cold aqua blue baptismal. Alice is blessed, hers is warm. I know who lit the lamp, and God didn't light a lamp in me to then shove me in the closet or in the back, put a cover over me. But God doesn't want a dark lamp. You have to do something. When Peter talks about this, he says you must add knowledge to your virtue. He's saying you have to have some light in your life. If you don't have that, then it's dark. He continues on and says, therefore take heed that the light which is in you is not darkness. Be cautious. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, the whole body will be full of light. Jesus, are you confused? Why would you repeat yourself? If your body is full of light, then your body will be full of light. Whose light? If you're looking at the right things and you're filling your life up with light, whose light shines out? It's not my light anymore. It's in me, but you have to be careful. You have to understand, God lit you as a witness to this world. As when the bright shining of a lamp gives you light. God lit you for a reason, and it's not coincidence, in my opinion, that in Revelation 1, John the Revelator describes Jesus in his glorious form as having hair like wool and his white clothing and his eyes like flames of fire. Is that a mistake that God said that your eye is the lamp? And that the literal glorified Christ had glowing eyes like flames of fire? I don't think so. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. In verse 52, skipping down a bit, Jesus says, woe to you lawyers, for you have taken away the key of knowledge, the key of gnosis, of knowing things. You've taken away virtue. You've taken away the focal point. They tried to be religious without God. What were they building? False religion. They were making it difficult. They were making it burdensome for people. Not only did they make it burdensome for people, they did not enter into the covenant they should have been in, and they prevented others. When Paul says, I'm the chiefest of sinners, it wasn't because he murdered people. It's because he tried to prevent people, in my opinion, from knowing God. Murder is bad. There's a lot of murderers. But if you prevent one of these little ones and you make them stumble, Jesus makes it clear what should happen to those people. And Paul was doing that to whole families. Paul must have felt like a heel because that light was not in him. He had a light, he thought, but he looked at the wrong things, and he was dark. And Jesus had to tell him, there's a danger in all this. Knowledge without a solid framework is dangerous. That key, that virtue is very important. Virtue is needed to guide the gain and usage of knowledge. You can read every book ever written, Jay. Without God, you're going to go the wrong way. That's just the bottom line fact. Without God, every book ever written will not lead you to God. You need God to lead you in the right direction. And I think some of the best scientific discoveries ever on the planet came through godly inquiry. God showed them things, and that's why we have them today. So, whose orders are you following? Who's the boss of your life? Who's telling you what needs to be told and how to do it? When we talk about orders, who's in charge? Who's the boss? And if you, like me, for most of my life said, I'm the boss, Frank Sinatra said it great. I did it my way. If you're the boss of your life, like me, you're going to mess it up. Now, there's a lot of people here. Adam and Eve messed it up. They did it their way, not God's way. The Persians, you might have heard of those guys before. They had some good things going for them until the writing on the wall showed up. And the classic Greeks had some good things going for them. Except their trains of thought led to some pretty nasty stuff. The Pharisees and the Sadducees seemed like they had everything together, but they left out the one key to that knowledge. And the Gnostics, you might have seen this term before. There's not one particular group of people. It's actually a whole bunch of different people, but they had similar or connected beliefs. Gnostic means one who follows knowledge. But it's not epignostics, and it should have been. It was Gnostics. In the Renaissance, we see similar things. In the Enlightenment period, we see the death of God. But you and I both know, if you've been paying attention, you've been reading His Word, you've been trying to gain some of that knowledge, God did die. Carrie, did God stay dead? No, He did not. Of course God died. And we did kill Him. People did kill God. But can you keep a good thing down? No, you cannot. This is what's really interesting, is we've tried to take knowledge to a new level with AI. Oh, now we've got computer synthesizing knowledge for everything everyone's ever said is on the web, and everything's being connected with AI, and we know so much. Is the key for knowledge in the right place? If not, what is AI going to give us? The Gnostics had some errors in their thought. They thought the body was evil, that the spirit was good, and that it was trapped inside this evil body. And we know from our discourse we've been talking about that corruption comes from within. We take on the corruption. The evil is of our own doing. We weren't made evil. Jeremy, you're beautifully and wonderfully made according to the Bible. But the evil in your life came from you. God didn't put it there. There's nothing evil of God. But they thought that the body was evil. And because the body was evil, that means creation was flawed. And creation itself might then be evil. Well, evil can only come from evil, which means, according to the Gnostics, God was evil. Well, wait a minute. They think there are multiple gods now. Because to explain away God, the creator God must be an evil God because He made things evil. He made people evil. But the spirit inside of a man is good, and therefore it must come from a good source, is what they thought. And that Jesus came from this true God, this good source. Can you see where their logic got them? They started to get twisted in their thinking. They bent it. They thought secret knowledge came from the serpent. The serpent was trying to set them free. Is that what God declares in the Bible? No, of course not. And of course, what does it lead to? One of two options. You became an ascetic. You became somebody who punished yourself into heaven, basically. You did everything you could to subdue this evil will. Now we're starting to sound like Buddhists. They destroyed the flesh so that the spirit could rise. And I'm not saying there isn't an element of truth to that. Paul says we have to crucify the flesh. We talked about that last time. But he doesn't say literally crucify your flesh. We don't kill ourselves. We don't beat ourselves. We don't starve ourselves. Yes, fasting's good, but fasting until death? Well, that's the most holy if you fast till you die. What? How are you going to be light to anything if you're dead? Trevor was right. You have to be here and do something. We can't trust in Brother Taylor or Brother Merrick anymore. They're not here to be the light. We are. And so we have to do those things. And the other side of that coin was hedonistic. Well, it doesn't matter. The Spirit's good no matter what I do. Therefore, I can do whatever I want with my flesh. And they thought, I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. You can't have it both ways. It's not that. That's not how it works. And so they thought, we'll do this, we'll do that, and it doesn't matter. The Gnostics had it all out of whack. The truth is, Craig, you were made beautifully. You're made good. Through your own misactions, you become corrupt. And through you reconnecting with the true source of knowledge, you can be saved. You can escape the corruption. The Gnostics had it wrong. In 2 Corinthians, it says, though we walk in the flesh, your body does matter. We do not war according to the flesh. For our weapons of warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God. Pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. Here we see that knowledge again. Knowing God matters. Studying God, learning about Him matters. Sunday school downstairs matters. Your personal Bible study at home matters. Getting together and talking and fellowship with people who believe matters. Bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. You've got to get rid of things. You've got to follow up your belief with virtue, and with virtue, knowledge. You've got to add to it and to be obedient to God. Without knowledge of Jesus, our Savior and teacher, even moral or religious learning remains powerless. There's no power in learning without Him, not true power. You might know some things, you might be able to do some things, but it's not the same. It won't change your life. There is not a self-help book out there without the key of knowledge inserted that's going to help you that much. The master's got some orders for us. He wants things done right. He is the boss, the foreman of this construction, if you will. In Colossians 2, attaining to all the riches of full assurance of understanding, to the knowledge of the mystery of God, both of the Father and of Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Without God as the key, the good things you should know remain locked away. I can't figure them out on my own. You are a child of God for a reason. You're dependent on God for a reason. He made you to be that way. We don't like being called sheep, but we ought to be. When the shepherd guides us a direction, you should say, okay. When he teaches you where not to go, you should learn that. Those are good things. Now, this I say, least anyone should deceive you with persuasive words. That false knowledge we saw. In Romans 11, oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are His judgments, His ways past finding out. Lily, I'm glad you're at Bible school. I'm glad you're trying to insert the key and learn good things that will improve your life. But know that just because you're there and just because you're learning something, you won't figure out God without God. It doesn't come naturally. It's not of this world. Right? Faith came to us by God's grace, and so too should knowledge. Jesus is our foundation and model. We talked about this before, but He's also the foreman. You have to add to your faith by listening to Him and doing it His way, obeying. And we know this is true because Jesus tells us this. John tells us this. In 1 John 2, now by this we know that we know Him. There's proof you know God if we keep His commandments. If there's no action attached to your understanding, your knowing God, then you probably don't really know Him. This is a test for you. If you feel like, do I really know God's will? Are you doing what God asked you to do? And if you can't say yes, then maybe not. But if you can say, yeah, I'm doing the best I can, Lord, increase my knowledge, you're on the right track. He who says, I know Him and does not keep His commandments is a liar. It's for show. It's the Pharisees' attitude. And the truth is not in him. The light is not in him. It's darkness. But whoever keeps His word truly, the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. This is the test. If you want to know, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Are you following his commandments? Are you learning more about him? Then you do know. Jesus said, most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master. The worker is not better than the foreman. The employee is not better than the boss. There's the reason they're the boss. Unfortunately, sometimes in our world we get that wrong and they hire somebody for the boss who has no business being the boss. And it puts a bad reputation on everything else going on. But if the boss is there for a reason, you should try and learn from them. I wish my kids could pause and slow down time so I could have them go with MJ and learn about some of the business skills he knows. With Sherry and learn about some of the prayer skills that she knows. You know what I'm saying? I wish I could do some of those things. But there's only so much time in the world, and you've got to dedicate yourself to the things that matter most. Nor is he who sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you know them. No. Blessed are you if you understand them. No. Blessed are you if you do them. Jesus says you have to do the stuff you know to be right. As long as it comes from the right source, as long as the key is in place, you don't have to worry about that. Paul continues and says, now thanks be to God who always leads us in triumph in Christ, and through us diffuses the fragrance of his knowledge. I have never once paid attention to this language before in my life. I read this and I thought, that is the weirdest way to say this. What do you mean the fragrance, Lord? What on earth do you mean by the fragrance? As if I'm a flower or something. But you better be. This blew my mind. It's the same as the lamp, it's just a different wording. In every place you're supposed to be this fragrance. For we are to God the fragrance of Christ. If you have dogs, you don't get to pet and snuggle your dogs very long before you smell like them. Or they smell like you, I should say more. If I go to your house, when I leave, I'll smell a little bit like your house does. Whether I want to or not. If you work in a restaurant, you go home every day stinking like the restaurant. If you're a garbage collector, at the end of the day, you smell bad if you have to actually work with the garbage. I'm not talking about the guy who sits in the truck with the fancy tools. He's got a nice job. But I'm talking about the person who actually has to sort that garbage out and haul garbage. And if you work in a mechanic shop, Shannon, I know at the end of the day, you come home smelling like grease and oil and iron and rust and whatever else you had to work with that day. Because that's how it works. We are, to God, the fragrance of Christ. When you have the key in place, when you're looking at the virtue, when you're trying to match the excellence of God, and you add knowledge of him, at the end of the day, you smell like Jesus. Among those who are being saved and among those who are perishing. You are the light. When you're full of light, not your light, God's light, when you're full of that light, not darkness, not your choosing, not your corruption, when you're full of that knowledge, when you know some things, it shows. It absolutely is evident. John 21, and there are also many things that Jesus did, which if they were written one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. I cannot imagine how many things Jesus did. I cannot imagine the 160 million different books that exist, let alone the billions upon billions upon billions of books that have been printed of those. And John, who may have self-titled himself the beloved, but John says that Jesus' miracles would fill all those books and all the other books that aren't written to fill in the entire earth. Like if every house was turned into a library, and every road was lined with bookshelves, and every skyscraper, books on what Jesus did. why would I turn to somebody who wrote one book? Now, I don't know if you guys know this. Sarah Remington wrote a book and Pastor helped out. He's got his name on a book. And I'm not saying that his book is bad or you shouldn't look to him for advice, because I think he's got the key and that makes all the difference. But do I trust him more or the guy who could write all the books? It shouldn't even be a question, really. We did a book study on his book. It was great. We got great discussion out of it. But I'm not going to trust MJ over JC. It's just not going to happen. Because I know where the key comes from. And this is where Peter comes in. You see, Peter was hanging out with Jesus one day, and Jesus was walking along, and somebody came up and said, hey, there's this guy whose daughter is dying, Jairus' daughter. You got to come see her. You got to help her out. And Jesus says, I'm on my way. As they're walking along, this lady touches his robe and is healed instantly. And Jesus turns and looks at, who touched my robe? And Peter, being Peter, what do you mean, Jesus? Like, everyone's pushing against you. Everyone's touching you. Who didn't touch you is the better question. And he says, no, virtue left me. I know this is different. Jesus knew some things. Peter's trying to figure some of those things out. He's gaining knowledge as they go along. And here in Luke 8, verses 49 through 53, while he was still speaking to someone right after this healing took place, someone came from the ruler of the synagogue's house saying to him, your daughter is dead. Peter hears this. What? Do not trouble the teacher. Leave Jesus alone. He's got better things to do. The daughter's dead. Don't bother coming, Jesus. But Jesus, when he heard it, answered him saying, do not be afraid. That's what the angels said to the shepherds in the field. Only believe, and she'll be made well. And when he comes into the house, he permitted no one to go in except Peter, James, John, and mom and dad. This little girl's parents and these 3 disciples. I don't know what he was teaching them at this moment, but I know what they learned from this must have been worth it. Now everyone in the room wept and mourned for her. Jesus was probably crying that this little girl, and the parents are so sad, he's probably caught up in the emotion of it all. But at least everyone else who he invited in was weeping. He says, do not weep. She is not dead, but sleeping. The doctors will tell you there's no hope. The counselors will tell you they're beyond helping. But that's not how God sees things. God has knowledge, you do not. And they ridiculed him, knowing that she was dead. I don't even have to continue the story, and I won't. What immediately happens? Jesus says a couple things. Her spirit returns to her body. She gets up and plays like a little kid would. God knows some stuff we just don't know. And Peter's kingdom keys for this week. We do not see what God is doing unless we know and trust him. Unless our eye is on the right thing, unless we are filled with that light, we do not see. If our eye is dark, if our lamp is hid or not useful, if we have our eye focused on the wrong thing, if our fragrance is a different fragrance, we must put ourselves at the feet of the Master and learn from him what is good and right. We have to get knowledge from him. Our light and our fragrance are both from him. You've got to have those things. Next week, we're going to get to self-control, and we're going to see how we add that to it. So we've given this measure of faith. It's a gift from God. We've added this idea of virtue, this excellence of God we're trying to add to our lives. Now we're knowing that we have to learn about him, learn of him, and get it in us. That knowledge has to be, we have to fill our lives with some of that knowledge. Not every knowledge. I'm not saying it's bad to know how to drive, but is it better to know how to drive or to go to heaven? Is it better to have a big bank account or go to heaven? We know these questions. So we're going to get to self-control and see how that adds to our faith. In your reflection this week, I'm asking you some questions. They might help you. In the practical application portion, I'm asking you to read Romans 11. Talks about how the Jews missed it. How did they miss it? And you can learn a little bit more about that yourself and figure that out. And then I encourage you to read your Bible more. Purposefully, read your Bible more.